Welcome, all you Sheehanites, to a very special episode of Sheehan is Dead Comics. Tonight is hopefully the first of many. It's going to be Sheehan Does Batman. So tonight we're going to be doing Batman Hush with J.J. Hodges from Comic Junkies podcast. You can find them on all of your podcast providers, Spotify, Apple, etc. And before we start, I just want to remind everyone of organicpricebooks.com. At the checkout code, put in Sheehan is Dead altogether. Sheehan is Dead at the coupon code. You'll save yourself about $2. But what's nice is not only are you going to save an extra $2, but you're also going to accumulate points. Every dollar you spend, you accumulate points. And at Organic Price Books, you're already going to be saving anywhere from $5, $10, $20 off of retail price for all of your absolute editions and omnibuses. That's organicpricebooks.com. Sheehan is Dead at the coupon code. Well, welcome, J.J. Hodges from the Comics Junkies podcast. It's really nice to have you, sir. And I'm glad we can do a jump on this about Hush. So. Yes. What's your first memory of it? Do you remember the first time you read it? Did you read it in singles, or did you read it collected, or what?
Yeah, I remember even before that, my oldest sister, coming to the house and saying, "Hey, there's a big time creator that's going to be on Batman coming up soon." She had a copy of Wizard magazine, and she's like, "I thought you might be interested." And I don't know why, but it did spark my interest immediately. I was like, okay, that's kind of interesting. I didn't know who Jim Lee was at the time, but I was like, this sounds kind of cool. So I sought it out when it came out, and I was like, that first issue just kind of the way it ended, I was very much like, that's it? What's going to happen? It was my first time really digging into a monthly series and wanting to follow the story all the way through.
Okay, awesome. I think I remember reading that Wizard issue, and I think that's what. Wow, you just took me way back. Wow, because
yeah.
I used to have a subscription to Wizard back in the day, and I remember. That must have been it, because I started my second shot at Batman mail subscription from DC.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what sparked it for me, was that Jim Lee was doing it, because I had heard of Jim Lee from Marvel, and then I knew he left to do Image, but I never collected those books. Because I just thought, I was like, wow, I'm not into all this crazy art and this hyper stylized craziness.
Yes.
So I remember I was super jazzed, because I was like, wow, Jim Lee is actually doing something with DC Comics. And then that was shortly after he sold, what was it, Wildstorm to them.
Right.
And so I think he sold it to them in 98 or 99. And then Hush, I think, took place in 2002. And so I remember getting issue 608 in the mail. And I remember reading it like you. And I was so excited. I was like, wow. I grew up on Jim Aparo and Norm Brayfogle and Graham Nolan, because I was huge. What really hooked me into Batman was Nightfall, because I had missed out on the death of Superman. I knew that happened, but my comic shop sold out. So I had Funeral for a Friend. And then I think my parents read it in the newspaper, like the New York Newsday on Long Island. It was like, hey, Batman is going to get his back broken. And I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, by who? And they're like, I don't know, some guy named Bane. And I'm like, I don't know who that is. Apparently a new character.
Right.
So that really hooked me into Batman. So seeing Jim Lee, as great as Jim Aparo, Graham Nolan, and Norm Brayfield were, Jim Lee
Hmm.
was like, wow, it was like mind blowing for me as a DC fan. And so I remember that got my my druthers going, and I was just like, every page is like, wow, I've never seen Batman drawn like this, you know.
Yeah,
So
it made me think it was like the animated series, like on steroids or something,
yes,
uh,
yes, perfect
the square
animated
jaw and
series.
everything. But yeah, I mean, it blew me away, and also the way it's written, just how kind of clinical Batman is too.
Yes.
Like that first issue where he's taken out the mercenaries, right? And and it's from like the audience POV, right? You're Batman in those moments. I mean, I'd never seen anything like that. It was so cool.
Yeah, I don't remember if maybe that article, I don't know if there was like a sneak peek of the first few pages of it in a Wizard magazine either, but I don't remember. I know there was that interval, like that Wizard Zero issue, like 3 or 4 pages that Jim Lee and Jeff Loeb worked on in Wizard that became like the bridge between I don't even know what issues it was for the story, but
Hmm.
it's in the book.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember that. I think that was when she came to the Batcave for the first time and she met Robin. I think that was it.
Yeah, it was in between those. I remember that, and it was like exclusively in Wizard until they collected the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so I do have like I probably have two or three versions upstairs.
Yes.
Because it's like, every now and then they're like, oh, we're gonna redo we're gonna re-release this for its whatever if anniversary, and I'm just a sucker for variant covers,
Oh
so
yeah.
I'm like, okay, I'll check it out.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, that story, Batman Hush, was actually my very first Absolute Edition. I
Oh.
I didn't even know what an Absolute Edition was.
Mhm.
And then it was, I think I'd like to say, I may be wrong, but I think this was one of the first ones that DC ever did. And I got this back in, I think, 2005.
Oh
And I
man.
got it off of Walmart for $55 and it retailed for 100. And
Nice.
I brought this to a Comic Con, I think back in like 2016, and Jim Lee signed the outer cover
Very
here.
nice.
And then he signed it. Oh, him and Alex Sinclair were sitting at a table doing autographs.
Hmm.
And so he signed it here at the top, and then Alex signed it right here on the bottom, Sinclair.
Very nice.
And I remember I was like so geeked, man. I was like super geeked. I was like, oh my God, oh my God, you know? And this book goes way back with me. And it was that summer, the summer actually of 2006, I moved down to Florida for a year and I
Hmm.
took this book with me. And it was my first time on my own, like far away from my parents.
Hmm.
So this book kept me company like plenty of nights, like just with my roommates who I had never met. And so this was like my comfort food, Batman, absolute Batman Hush. And I just love the art in this particular format. Have you ever seen it in the absolute?
Not like personally,
Oh, cool.
but it because this is my first absolute was the New Frontier,
Oh, okay.
and
Yeah.
it was actually kind of like a midnight drunken purchase on Amazon. I was like, I'm just gonna buy this. I don't care. And then like it came in the mail, and I was like, you know what? I'm keeping this, and I'm gonna get it signed by Darwin Cook at a con. And unfortunately, he passed before I was able to
Oh,
meet
I
him.
thought that was the follow-up. I was gonna say you got Darwin Cook to sign it before he passed.
I wish, yeah, but I have met both Jim Lee and Jeff Loeb, and told them that Hush got me into monthly comics. And I had uh, it wasn't an unwrapped edition, but I
Oh,
should
the
have
black
brought
and
it.
white
But
one?
no, it was before that. It was like in, I want to say 2009 or 10. I got this cool formatted one. Maybe it was unwrapped. but they both signed that for me. That was the first time I met Jim Lee, who was like the nicest guy. Because I was like, I'm so excited. I'm finally getting to meet you because I've never gotten to meet you with these things. And he said, well, that's such a coincidence because I've never met you either.
Huh.
You know, so so I thought that was kind of a fun interaction.
Yeah.
And and he drew a little quick Batman profile in the thing, and then Jeff Loeb, like, because there was because there's the splash page of Batman swooping into the opera to fight Harley
Oh yeah.
Quinn.
Yeah.
But there was, I think it was in the beginning, like they had like a black and white version, like a penciled version.
Mhm.
Um, Actually, you know what? I think that's what it was. It wasn't unwrapped because that wasn't happening yet. It was just the pencil version of all the stuff, like pencil and ink of all the issues. And Jeff Loeb signed it by having Batman say "I'm Batman" like with a big word balloon and signed it underneath. So that was
Wow.
pretty cool.
That's super cool. What con was it at?
New York Comic Con.
New York Comic Con. All right. So I my very first New York Comic Con was 2014, and by that time Jeff Loeb was working for Marvel and TV.
Yep,
So
yep.
I don't remember even seeing his name on the credits or even like CGC that that he was doing a private signing. Like
Hmm.
I bought I bought Batman 608 CGC with his signature because I knew I probably couldn't get it because he was working for Marvel TV at the time.
Uh-huh.
And I think it was a 9.8. I think I paid like 150, and then I brought it to Comic Con, and then Jim Lee signed it. And then a couple of years later, it was Jim Lee, Alex Sinclair, and Scott Williams were doing the CGC signing.
Hmm.
And so I sent it in. And so now I have Loeb, Lee, Williams, and Sinclair that have signed it. And
That's awesome.
it's signature series. I feel silly now because I it was on my mind to grab it and then I forgot until just now. Um, but yeah, it's a sight to behold. It's beautiful. But this Comic Con, now that Jeff's not working for Marvel anymore in TV, and I think he's back to freelance, I'm
Yeah.
going on the 12th. I forgot to ask you the last time we talked. Are you going any day this year? Or?
Uh, Unfortunately, no, not this year.
Okay.
I don't have the time.
Okay. Yeah, my friend, my co-pilot Scott and I are going on Thursday the 12th. So I'm hoping to meet Jeff. Or as Rob Liefeld lets us know his legal name, he Joseph Loeb the third.
Yep.
But you know
Yep.
him as Jeff Loeb, he says. So I'm looking forward to meeting him and maybe bringing my book with me and having him sign it as well. But like, dude, like this art is just otherworldly, and
Yeah.
to have it in the king size version, it's
Yeah.
it's just unbelievable. That was the first thing I just drooled over this, and like even the staples in the middle are kind of worn because I've gone through this thing so many times and even tried to like doodle things that were inside of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I remember reading either it was like the 10th or 15th anniversary. They were doing some interview with like it was like Newsarama or something CBR. I don't know. I think it was Loeb and Lee, and Jeff Loeb just straight up said like, well, a lot of the stuff that we did in it was just stuff I wanted to see Jim draw,
Yes, yes, yes.
and who could blame him? Like it's like,
Right.
in this scene, Batman punches Superman in the face. Sure, why not? Like because who wouldn't want to see Jim Lee not just draw Superman, but draw Batman kicking the crap out of Superman? So,
No, what's funny?
and
No, I'm sorry,
okay,
but real quick, know what's funny about that is at that particular time, I didn't know that I didn't know about the Dark Knight Returns. And so this was
hmm,
my first introduction to Batman and Superman fighting. So I was like, wow, this is
yeah.
beautiful, and I was like, whoa. And then years later I found out about, the Dark Knight Returns. So yeah, but sorry, go ahead.
No, no, I was just gonna say like it's I that particular issue. like I was like a freshman in high school and I brought it with me and I gave it to like my who's been like my best friend since for like the past like 20 some years. And I like gave it to him. I'm like, dude, you gotta read this. It's so cool. And it was sort of like that, that image from Doomsday Clock where Rorschach is looking at Batman as he's going through Rorschach's journal. He's like, "What
Yeah.
page are you on?" Batman's like 4. And I
Yeah.
was like that with him. I was like, where are you? He's like, "We're ready yet." And like we're like walking by the hall through each other or to by each other in the hallway. And I was like, do you read it yet? He's like, "No, I've been in class, man."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like, all right. But at the end of the day, he gave it back to me. Like, dude, that was pretty cool. I was like, I know.
Yeah. It's really amazing. So let's just at least start a little we've jumped around with our fawning over it. Let's
Sure.
talk about it first. So you had mentioned the mercenaries. So we see this is the very first time we see Batman
Yeah.
Batman drawn by Jim Lee.
Yeah. Yeah. And it looks incredible. Like it's just which was that and Frank Miller's version was really what informed Zack Snyder when he was crafting his version of Batman. And you
Right.
can tell he's just like he's like a Hulk of a man, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
muscles
And
on muscle.
what about do you remember when Jim mentioned sometime later he said, and I didn't notice this at first, but as in subsequent readings, I tried to follow along when he's like, yeah, my Batman, he started out big. And I noticed the more I went on in the story, I like by the end, he was almost like a Neil Adams Batman, like slimmer, not so bulky, more athletic. Did you pick up on that at all?
I didn't, but it kind of makes sense because Batman's being put through the ringer through it. So maybe he just, with like his
What
injury get in the first issue, maybe by then he's just not, you know, yeah, hasn't had as much protein as he should or something. I don't know.
right, right, right. Yeah.
But
So
also that image that you see is from a little kid's point of view. So it
true.
makes sense that he would be this like towering, huge figure of a person.
Yes. Good point. Good point. Yeah. I remember when I first saw this, I was blown away because I'm like, oh my God, Jim Lee's drawing this. But then at the same time, I was like, wait a minute, Batman's really big. He looks a lot larger than what I'm used to. But then I became acclimated to it. And I love I love how the animated movie, it kind of like picked and parceled like the best spots out of here. Now
Yeah, yeah,
they didn't do like the first person view like you had mentioned about the mercenaries and stuff.
yeah, yeah,
But the whole part with the kid being kidnapped instead of Killer Croc, it was Bane, which was, cheesy. Bane is
it,
more like I in my heart of hearts, I would love to see a Nightfall like two-part movie like they did Long Halloween. But
yeah, yeah. Well, that movie, there was bits and pieces I liked, but for the most part, um, it just, it wasn't, I don't know, it was really disappointing. I thought, like, because part of it because it was trying to fill in with
their
the
own
animated,
continuity.
right, right,
Yeah.
and and then so that I don't that hurt it a little bit, but at the
Yeah.
same time, it was like, but then again, it was nice to have kind of the familiarity with Jerry O'Connell and Rebecca Romaine as the Superman and Lois, but also I just the and I'm sure we'll get into it. The Tommy Elliott of it all like was extremely disappointing. Like it's like, oh, we have to have a new twist in this, so the audience won't see it coming, and it's like, well, you could have done better than that because the book
Yes.
I think does a really great job of even though you kind of know what's going on in the end, it's still just ambiguous enough that you're like, well, I got to see what happens the next time this guy pops up.
Yes.
And and I remember it wasn't too long after it was like Batman Gotham Knights he came back, which I remember was just an awful story. um, but then later like Paul Dini would redeem it and do like really great Hush stuff.
Yes, yes. I love the adaptations they did, like page for page, like Dark Knight Returns Part One and Two,
Hmm,
Year
hmm.
One.
Yep.
And so when they did Hush and the cover looked just like the trade,
Yep. Yep.
I was like, my mind was blown. I was so excited, man. I was like geeked beyond. I couldn't even. The last animated movie I was super excited for was Under the Red Hood in 2010. And
Yeah.
so this one came out in, I think it was 2018 when they did Hush. So I thought they were going to do like a page for page adaptation like they did with Year One and The Dark Knight Returns.
Hmm,
So when I saw this and he's starting out at that, that socialite gathering, I'm
hmm,
like,
hmm.
that's not how the comic starts. Like, what's going on here? And of course, I wanted my Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill
Of
for the
course.
story, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh no, they're they're doing it their own continuity spin with this. Oh
Hmm.
no. Oh
Yeah.
no, this isn't good. This isn't really good like the Under the Red Hood one started out. Oh boy. And
Yeah.
I was like, I felt bad that I even bought the 4K because I was super excited. Now I've kind of adjusted and accepted it's part of their own continuity.
Sure.
So instead of like a 10, like I wanted to give it, I still give it like a 7, 7.5.
Yeah.
Um, but even the part like in the book here, as we get toward the middle, and there's that scene with the watercolors when Tommy Elliott gets killed,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Batman is like going ham on the Joker, and they're doing that whole flashback.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's like, thinking about Jason and Barbara, and I think he even thinks about maybe Sarah Essence, like from the Joker killed her in No Man's Land.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And I remember reading that and being so profoundly caught up in the emotion and being like, wow, because I love callbacks like that. And
Yeah.
then there was so much heart in that. And then when I saw it in the movie, I'm like, they completely
The
missed it. They missed,
the
they missed it.
well, the interesting thing is that the book is so that particular chapter is so close quarters, and you don't even really realize it until the camera is panning away at the end, right? Like it takes place in like a 10-foot radius, you know,
Mhm.
whereas the movie makes that abundantly clear, and it kind of ruins the emotion of it, right? Like the
There,
heart of it, like
there's
you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, granted, in their continuity, like the Killing Joke didn't happen, and Death in the Family didn't happen. So they didn't show like those
Right.
callbacks, like the watercolor callbacks that Jim was doing in the middle of the story for like when him and Tommy first met each other, and then for
Hmm.
those stories. And all we get in the movie is he sees the Joker kill Tommy, and then he's got him by the throat, and he's just growling, going like that. And then Gordon
Yeah.
comes up, puts the gun behind his head, and then the Joker says something, and Gordon punches him in the face, and that's the end of the scene.
Yeah.
Whereas in the book, there was so much more body to the story. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And when this happened in the book, I was like, oh, maybe the new character isn't Hush, you know.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
And then, obviously in the movie, it ended up being the Riddler because I was obviously thinking Tommy was going to come back, but
Right.
yeah, like dig it. Like here, they reference the Killing Joke, and Bruce has all of his inner monologue going on,
Hmm, hmm.
and then he's just punching him back and forth, and then he's got it with here in the top one, Joker's got the crowbar, and
Yep.
he's hitting Jason with it, and he's just like crushing the Joker with fists.
Yep.
Anyway, the movie left a lot to be desired in comparison.
Well, it was also the first time you see the Joker in that continuity. So for them to have like a history, it's like, well, we don't feel that.
Right.
Whereas if they had done it as kind of a one-off with you know, even if it wasn't Kevin Conroy, let's say if it had been, you know,
The same
like a
guy,
sequel,
Jason, who is it? Jason Mar.
Jason O'Mara with Batman.
Thank
Yeah,
you. Thank you.
if they had done like maybe it had been a sequel or a prequel to Under the Red Hood, and it had been Bruce Greenwood and John DiMaggio, then it would have been like, oh, there's a history here because even
Yes.
in that story, that adaptation, I think they do a good job of, even though the only thing we see is the death of Jason Todd at the beginning of the film, it's enough for when Batman and Nightwing confront Joker in Arkham. It's enough for us as the audience to go, oh, there's real hate here. There's real like you know you know just anger towards this guy.
Yeah.
Whereas in this thing, it's like we don't have any emotional attachment to this particular rivalry. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes. Good point. Good point. And a shout out to whoever the actress was that did Harley in the movie. She actually did Tara Strong and Arlene Sorkin proud. I thought she did a really good job. So
I'm pretty sure it's Hynden Walsh who's done Harley a couple different times.
yeah, she's like,
Um,
"Sorry, Rico," after she shoots him in the
yeah.
cartoon.
Um, and that's the thing. This book, I was thinking about this a lot, where I was like, I I I missed this era of the comics where it
Mhm.
was that it was like the continuity, despite being number 600 something or another, didn't feel well. Okay, there's two thoughts on this. It didn't feel you know, uh, overwhelming coming into it,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
Because I think Jeff Loeb is good at some shorthand, and having those watercolors is another good shorthand to
Mhm.
just say like, here's this beat, and in the story keeps going. So it's really, really fast moving. But another thing I've been thinking about lately that just annoys the ever loving crap out of me is how this writer and artist team will come onto Batman. Like, you have Snyder and Capullo with the New 52, and they did all this cool stuff with the New 52. And then Rebirth happens, which is supposed to be like right after this. And it's basically just Tom King going, it's a brand new Batman story. So, you know what I mean? Like, there wasn't a through line that I felt like I could connect with. Um, it's just like, I mean, the best way to put it would be like from like Batman Returns to Batman Forever, right? It's like, well, I mean, it kind of looks the same, but it's also because it's Batman, but it obviously isn't because the Batmobile looks different and Batman is a different actor. So this is clearly like, without even knowing what the word reboot meant, we all kind of knew that's what it was because James Bond had been doing the same thing for years, right? You go into Roger Moore from Sean Connery, and it just feels like a completely different movie, and that's not a bad thing. It's just what it is. But with comics, sometimes it irks me just a little bit more because I'm like, I would have liked to have seen how the Joker went from being that regular guy at the end of the New 52, like on the bench with Bruce Wayne, back to being the Joker. Not explained. And maybe that's just like a silly nitpick, but sometimes I just go, I wish these writers weren't so like, you know, hey, I'm doing my thing. I'll call back to some stuff, sure, but this is my Batman now. And it's like, but it really, but it isn't. It's everybody's Batman.
Dude, you could get me going, and I can go on and on and on because that's such a bug for me because
Mm-hmm.
up until the New 52, DC pretty much stuck to Denny O'Neil's old school continuity, where Denny had
Right,
particular things that Batman did and didn't do, and Denny was like the dean or the czar of Batman continuity.
right.
So I loved all that stuff. And then once they did New 52, and it's like, oh yeah, Jason Todd died within 5 years. He's had Dick Grayson who became Nightwing. Did Nightfall even happen? Like
I think it's implied, but how could it have? Because
right. And it's like ever since then, DC Comics has basically said, like you said, well, it's my Batman run now. And editorial has basically been like, well, you tell your story and we'll
Hmm.
just figure it out. Whereas now, where they have the they're they really don't have any established editors to that are versed. Like
Yeah,
they have a lot of first time editors. Apparently they're overwhelmed between when they sold from WB to AT&T and now Discovery. So it's kind of like, if you and I were an editor, we might have like 5 or more books, who knows. So
right.
they can't pinpoint the continuity, and it's like, yeah, Dark Crisis, Infinite Earths, yeah, we're starting over and everything happened. So there's been death metal, there's been Tower of Babel, there's been this, that, Death of Superman, and everything's like kind of happened, and there's no particular continuity. So I feel your pain, and that is a huge, huge point of contention with me. So
Yeah. I mean, I enjoy the stories like Chip Zdarsky's Batman. I think it's been great.
mhm.
But at the same time, it's very much like, it's like you can't tell me that Val Kilmer was playing the same Batman that Michael Keaton was. You can't tell me that Chip Zdarsky's Batman is the same Batman that Tom King was writing. You know what I mean? Is that a bad thing? I mean, it's up to the reader, I suppose. But and even me, like you can catch me tomorrow, and I might say, oh no, you know what, I'm over it. But then like on Friday, I'll go, no, dude, it's kind of irritating when you think about it.
Dude, I am on no, you're preaching to the choir. I'm the same way. It's like sometimes I'm like, my head canon is one thing. I'm not, that doesn't bother me because I got my own thing going on up here. And then it's like, man, why did they do this? So yeah, I feel you.
Yeah.
110%. But back to at least when continuity was continuity, right?
Right,
So
right.
this is the way the first issue ends, with this lovely, lovely picture here by Jim Lee,
Oh God, it's
right?
gorgeous. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's when we learn that Poison Ivy has her what pheromone effect. Is there even like a particular like wording for how she
Uh, I
affects?
I guess like I mean, usually I think they just stick with like she knows how to mind control people, like her
So
lipstick can mind control people or
we'll
whatever.
we'll we'll stick with that. Her mind control lipstick.
Yeah.
So on the next one we see Bruce. He's this is after he fell. So you got all those all these hooligans, and Oracle is trying to talk to him. And then just as they go to grab him, who shows up? Huntress.
New and improved Huntress.
New and improved Huntress. And I love that this outfit is the one that they basically adopted in Justice League Unlimited.
Yep,
You
yep.
know? And then
Yeah,
obviously in the cartoon they had Batgirl, which was cool. And they honored the new school Batgirl costume, which was pretty neat.
right, right.
So here
Uh,
she does her thing. She rescues Batman, and then this is like the what's maybe first time, second time we see Hush up here, like observing things.
I think it's the first time we see him because I don't think he's in the first issue.
Right.
Um, like we just know
Or we
somebody
see,
cuts.
yeah, we see the bullet
Yeah,
that gets shot. Look at this page, man. This is awesome. Look at again with Jim's art. Like this is him. Like this ain't even like a splash play page of like karate kicking. It's
it's a that's a really good kind of callback to like the Dark Knight Returns, which
yes.
very obviously Jim Lee is inspired by with his art. Um,
Good point.
but because like it's just broken Bruce and Alfred looking over him like I don't know, he's dead.
Right. And he's got like the hologram of his skull up there, and like normally you get excited for drawing like when Batman and Superman are fighting, a
Mhm.
splash page. But here he is like on a stretcher. He's got this going on and that going on. I love Jim's detail. And then
It,
this is
it
the first time we meet Tommy.
yeah, just and like what's everybody so nervous about? It's just brain surgery.
Hey, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Like Dr. Cox a little bit from Scrubs, that
Yes.
kind of attitude.
Mhm. And then here you go, you got this. Now we're on the chapter 3 when Bruce goes to Arkham,
Yep, yep.
and Croc breaks free from the guards, and then he's got to go put him down again. And then he talks to Amanda Waller, and then now Tommy is coming over and visiting Bruce, and now we establish the real connection with the watercolors.
Yeah, yeah. And the Tommy's kind of tragic backstory.
Yes,
Um, so you can understand why he and Bruce's friendship kind of, at least at this point, we think, oh, I see why their friendship kind of went away,
yes,
because they were just angry little kids, and now they're adults, and for the most part, they're, you know, doing okay. It was funny rereading this and going, you know what? I'm with Dr. Elliot here. Bruce, really, you shouldn't be out.
yeah,
Like,
right. Be like, hey man, hey, it's a little early.
yeah,
I tell you, this seeing this picture of the car with the headlights.
yeah, yeah.
I just read Robin Tragedy and Triumph from 1991.
Okay.
The headlights on the cars and like the street lights, all they did was draw like these circles,
Hmm.
like two or three circles within a circle, and
Yeah,
then colored it yellow,
yeah,
like with yellow, like colored pencil almost you could do.
probably,
It
yeah.
was so different than, obviously when Photoshop is established, you know.
Yeah, like digital coloring and stuff. Yeah.
Yep.
It's funny you say that because I still love that kind of quick technique. Not the first New York Comic Con I went to, but it was in like 2010, I think. And I met Francis Manipool, and he and Jeff Johns were big on the Flash at the time.
Yes.
And I bought like his like sketchbook, and he's like, well, hang on a second, and he takes it and he draws a side profile of the Flash with just three or four brush ink, brushes of his like red paintbrush. It's like there it is, Flash. Like you did that in 3 seconds with just three or four strokes.
Yeah.
I my stuff is more like Tom King's six figure
Oh
covers.
yeah, his is brutal. I would, if I ever brought a comic to him and he drew like and I didn't know any better and he did that, I would be insulted. I'd be like, no, just keep it, bro. Like,
No, I honestly I knew he did it that way, and I got one from him. He drew like Batman on a motorcycle, and it's somewhere upstairs.
and it
It's
was
just
like his stick figure thing.
Yeah, yeah. It was because I was like, could you draw Batman Beyond? He's like, I don't really know how. What if I put him on a motorcycle? I was like, sure. He's like, okay, and does that. I'm like, good enough. That's cool. Uh, Not what I expected, but I still like it.
Well, I'll tell you, speaking of Tom King, this is the first time that I remember there was that flirtation in like Long Halloween, but this was the first time that I personally remember uh Bruce and Selena like
Yeah,
kissing and embracing.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
Right.
I almost bought the figure of that. I saw it on eBay a couple of years ago for like $900, and I was like, man, I was so tempted, so tempted. I've drawn that. I think I drew it one time. I I was in my early 20s and I did it, and I was just like, wow. Again, I drew that, and I used I think it was like a thick charcoal pencil, and it was so cool. I don't know what I did with it, but
That
now,
you
huh?
well, because of like Batman Returns and a little bit Batman the Animated Series, I've always loved the idea of Batman and Catwoman being together. So when I saw that
Was this your first time that you remember in your fandom seeing them like
in
come together?
in the comic books, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
me too. Yeah,
And me just going, oh, this is great. This is what I've always
right.
wanted.
Right. Now this I did like with them, maybe because it was the uniqueness of it. Whereas personally, and not to go off on a side tangent too long, but I felt like Tom King's Catwoman and Batman was just, it was too much for me. I don't know, by the end of the run, I was like, okay, I'm burnt out. I can't.
You
Like,
mean the Batman Catwoman book or in the
no, I actually haven't read the book yet, but
okay.
the whole thing of like, them leading up to where, she was like in every issue toward the
Mhm.
end, like City of Bane and then da 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 da, da and that whole thing. Like what started out as cool and reminded me of this story. By the
Yeah.
end, I was like, all right, she's in everything. Like they're on the beach together, like he's holding her in his Batman costume, and she's Catwoman on the beach in some, palm trees and whatnot. It was just really weird.
Yeah, that some of that story took some weird turns where it was like Tom Selleck Batman for a couple of
Yeah,
years.
yeah. It was too much, but I digress. So here where they actually like first kiss, it was like, whoa. But that's
Yeah,
as
yeah.
far as Jeff really took it. It wasn't like, is he gonna propose to her? It was like,
Hmm.
oh my God, toward later when he took his mask off and showed her and she was like,
Yeah.
Bruce. Like I was like, oh my goodness. I was like so geeked out by it.
That's one of my favorite moments. That issue actually. That's actually the um my that cover is my phone background now. Um
Oh yeah,
if you
man.
can see it
Oh yeah,
because
I see. It's him and Nightwing, right?
him and Nightwing, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's when it wasn't like I don't think that was the first time I ever read Nightwing in a comic, but it was the first time I remember really loving Dick Grayson because I never really was a big Dick Grayson fan until this, and then digging into some other stuff. Like I think not long after Pete Tomasi was on Nightwing, and he did some really great stuff. Um, and now like the Tom Taylor stuff is just genius.
Yes, I'm
Um,
enjoying that very much so too.
oh yeah, yeah. But that one in particular, I just the the way he talked with Bruce and everything. And again, I can hear the voices. It's Kevin Conroy and Lauren Lester, and the way they interacted was just it was so good. Oh, it's so good.
Yes.
But we're getting ahead
Yeah.
of ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, you and I both still hear that even to this day. I'm like Kevin Conroy and Lauren Lester speaking back and forth. And it's Lauren's like grown-up voice that he
Yeah, yeah,
had in the third, what was it, the fourth season of the cartoon? Yeah.
yeah,
Now
yeah. Well, if
back
you
in
see it on HBO Max, it's only three, but the
three.
DVDs were four.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Because I'm watching the bundle on Vudu and I stick to that because the HBO one has it like out of order to where
yeah.
it's like, what? But I digress. Now, back in 2002, when this was going on, and into 2003, for me, I was in my early 20s, and the internet still wasn't a huge thing.
Hmm.
So there wasn't really, and even with Wizard, there wasn't, I don't remember there being like a big spoiler of like, oh, in the solicitations, Batman's fighting Superman. And so when
Right.
I saw the end of this and he says, not him, and I'm like, who's he talking about? And then I see Superman, mind, mind blown,
Yep,
mind
yep.
blown. All right.
Well,
I
yeah.
said, this is
Well,
the
that
first time I ever saw like him and Superman getting ready to fight. It was like,
it's funny because I had read The Dark Knight Returns, but I didn't necessarily put that together only because the that's kind of out of continuity, which I didn't really know what that meant at the time, but
yes.
it felt like, well, this is the stuff that's going on right now
Mhm.
versus like that book that happened years ago and is its own thing. Um, like the concept of the multiverse before the multiverse was a thing, I guess. I mean, at least in my geek knowledge.
Mhm.
So I agree. That like as an adult reading it, when he goes, "Oh no, not him," that's a callback to that's them homaging Frank Miller in The Dark Knight Returns.
Dude, you're
Um,
100% right. I actually didn't even consciously think of that until you just mentioned it. That's right.
I
That's
I didn't
right.
I didn't think of it till I did the reread.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, that's from that."
Yeah. When
But
he's in,
yeah,
but that one was what in the subway when he's fighting the what's her name? The Nazis, the Nazi
I don't remember her name, just
yeah.
the Nazi boob
Yeah, the
lady.
Nazi boobs. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, not him, not now, or not yet, or something like that. Yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I agree. It's like Poison Ivy being held by Superman, and even the concept of like, this was like, at least in my mind, before there was all the concept of like evil Superman or Superman gone bad. Hadn't
Yes,
really happened a lot in the comic books. Uh,
correct. Correct.
so it's like, what, like, again, kind of that like, how are they going to get out of this one? You know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
It's
you
like,
can't
how
stop
did
Superman.
Superman end up like that? And how in the world is Batman gonna escape this?
Right,
And
right.
again, I was reading this issue to issue. So I was waiting like a whole month to find out what
Hmm.
happens next. Right.
I
So
remember, yeah.
and then it's like, whoa. And then there's the line they homage in the cartoon that again it doesn't hit like it does in this, where
Yeah.
Bruce says like deep down Clark's a good person, but deep down I'm not. Right.
It's great. It's great in the book though. It's just
Oh
it
yeah.
always makes me laugh.
Yeah. I think this might have been the first time where I found out that Batman had the kryptonite ring too. When I was reading it,
Yeah,
got it
same.
right there. Right.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh man, well, good thing Batman has that ring. And it's like, I don't know when he got the ring, but I guess I'll find out. And then here comes Superman. And I love how Jim drew the like the plants around his neck too. So you knew he was like under a spell.
Yep,
You know?
yeah. It's such a it's a good visual clue for us as the audience to go, okay, this isn't just Superman acting rogue, like
Right.
he's mind controlled.
Yes. And then here comes like an absolute geek spread page that just still to this day just makes me hot under the collar.
Mm. Oh yeah, yep. It
You know?
I wish we had gotten something like that in Batman v Superman. I mean,
Yes.
that's a cool fight that they have, but at the same
Mhm.
time, I was like, dang it, like couldn't they have done that, you know?
Yeah, theirs was more the homage to the Frank Miller
Right.
fight as opposed to like that. Yeah, they had, and I mean, obviously the perfect person for it is Zack Snyder, so he
Yeah.
missed that one, right?
Yeah.
And I love how Selena drops Lois,
Yeah.
and I was
Uh,
like,
she-
whoa, and then next thing you
she-
know, he's got her.
I that was I that issue, I mean, being what, like 20 some pages, I mean, it reads I can read that in like 5 minutes because it's so kinetic. I have to stop myself to slow down and enjoy all the art and everything because
Yes,
if I'm reading it just for the story, I'm flipping through and I'm done.
yes,
And
yes,
that's not at all an insult. It's just
right, right. It's like,
extremely like
and it's almost like you have your own like score, pulse pounding score in your head while you're reading it. You're like boom, 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 boom. Yeah,
right, right. And
yeah,
that's the thing that the movie well, the movie kind of suffers the same thing I think that the All-Star Superman movie does, where it's like those both of those stories, Hush and All-Star Superman, they work great this as chapters in a story, right? So trying to like do it as a movie, it's like maybe it would have been better if they had done like a 12-part, like 10, 15 minute a piece miniseries or something like that, Um, because it's like going from uh, you know, the Catwoman issue and the Superman issue and the Harley Quinn issue. It's like that really only works in monthly comics, you
yes,
know. Uh, it's and same with like All Star Superman. All Star Superman's a little bit more egregious with it, because he's going from this, that, the other thing because Grant Morrison's brain is on a whole other level than the rest of us.
yes. It
um,
is. It is.
so I just remember the movie being like, well, we have to have the Batman Superman fight, and then in the movie itself, it's cool, looks great, but at the same time feels a little like, okay, it's like you did it because you felt like you had to. You know what I mean?
Yes, yes. No, I understand. I understand. Like even the part with the dog, like they didn't have crypto in the movie.
Yeah, yeah.
Like right
But
there.
yeah, I love it though. I love that he shows up in it, and it just because I remember the first time I read it, just going, "Oh, it's crypto," and I don't even know how I knew crypto. Like I just knew that Superman had a dog at some point. I thought that was so cool.
I don't know if I did I know it maybe from when I was a little kid, from like catching some of the reruns on USA of Super Friends before junior high, or this was shortly around the time, this was like right before I think Jeff did him and Michael Turner and Ed McGuinness. They did volume one and then volume two of Superman Batman, which blew my mind too.
This was before that. I remember
Yeah.
that because I got because like because I told Jeff Loeb, I'm like, you're the reason I'm buying monthly comics because it started with Hush, and then I started to follow writers. So I'm going to follow Jeff Loeb. Well, he's doing a Superman Batman comic. Well, I'm going to buy that. And then it's like, hey, I've seen the Teen Titans cartoon. I like that. I'm going to buy Teen Titans. Suddenly, I'm a Jeff Johns fan. What else is he doing? Oh, Green Lantern's coming back. I don't know anything about Green Lantern, but his art looks cool. And
Yes.
then
Yes, yes.
Years
That's
and
why
years
I
later.
started buying the Batman Superman, was because I'm like, oh, Jeff Loeb's on this. All right,
Yep.
well, he did Hush. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
So now they settled their differences, and then Hush sees what are friends for and laughs to himself, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And then this is when we go to the opera.
I've always loved that cover, the Harley Quinn on the poster, but it's like almost Deadpoolish, right?
Mhm.
That even though she's just a poster, she's still pointing a gun at Bruce's head.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And so here, Batman and Selina go to, well, Bruce and Selina go to the opera.
Hmm.
Selina doesn't know he's Batman, but he knows obviously that she's Catwoman.
Right.
So then this whole thing goes down, and Jim's art is just amazing. And then there's a flashback, Bruce's
Yeah.
inner monologue is at work again. And now that we go back to him, he's talking about him and Tommy. And now we're going back to Harley, and then another like just take your breath away splash page.
Yeah. It just I mean that you can hear like Shirley Walker's music, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yep. And you can hear Arlene Sorkin. Yep. And then let's see, he's fighting the thugs. Then Catwoman comes down, and then Catwoman gets shot by Harley here.
Yeah.
So Bruce is holding her. Then this is where we get that big turn where Bruce kicks open the door and he says, "No," here,
Yeah.
and then this is obviously the wrap up where you see the Joker on top
Yeah.
of Tommy. And the gun, I love how the gun says bang, but yeah, Tommy's there with a bullet, right? And so,
That yeah, very classic Joker imagery, you know.
mhm,
Uh just and how many times has that page now been replicated in some way, shape, or form? Like I think DC Direct had a statue of it at one point.
mhm,
Not like with Elliot's body, but with
right.
Joker with the bang gun, right?
And then here, Bruce is choking him out.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Just and
He
you get
just
to see the
looks
rage, yeah, in his face.
he just looks like a monster at that point,
Right.
like all the shadows are over him, so you can't really see anything human about him.
Mhm. And then here he's having this is such a great watercolor showing the innocence of Barbara as he's having his inner monologue.
I love that. That is so beautiful looking. I wish I
Right,
could have that framed in my house.
right, right. It's just like there she is. And then he's still going through it. Catwoman comes over. She's trying to get Bruce off and she scratches him. And he's having, he's seeing Jason Todd. And then he hits her in her bandaged arm.
Yeah.
Now we're on to the next one. And this is when they do that Captain, my Captain, with the funeral is coming. Like,
Yeah, yeah. Which I think I only know that because of Dead Poet Society.
yeah.
I don't think I've
And
ever read that.
here's that picture you have.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah. It's I mean it's like classic Batman and Robin, but he's Nightwing now.
And I love this. I love how it's overhead. This is not easy to draw, especially with the rain effect,
Oh yeah, yeah.
right?
Yeah, it looks
Like
it looks incredible. Yeah.
the perspective, like Jim, amazing. And then here's more Bruce's forensics,
I love that scene. I think it
isn't
is
it?
so cool. Like
Right?
and when he says like computer track my voice, he's like it goes as high as Superman and as low as the Joker. Even though the images aren't moving, I feel like I can feel like the hologram of Superman coming up and the hologram of the Joker coming up.
Yes.
And and also the visual clues in there, like there's a big there's a silhouette of a question mark. So
Mhm.
it's like Loeb and Lee are telling you right then and there, like, hey, who's the real mastermind here?
Mhm. And then I love this when Jim drew the different Batmobiles.
Yes.
And like here's the one from Batman Forever.
Hmm. Hmm.
Mhm.
Yep.
And then this is when him and Nightwing go out and they run into the Riddler. And it's more or less like a throwaway, like, the Riddler, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. The Riddler's, Batman tells him he's losing it.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
he's basically a C-lister now. And so
Hmm.
that's what, the end where, it all comes back around. It's like, whoa. And then
I
what
thought
about, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say it's a classic kind of Batman adventure in that sense, like Riddler robbed an armed truck and Batman and Robin are gonna go stop him.
Right. And it just so happens to be within this overarching story. It almost felt like this is where Jeff was taking a breather. And it was
Hmm.
kind of like, all right, like this is kind of like a side mission that they're doing, but we'll catch back up with the main plot. Little did we know, obviously, right? And then what
Yeah, this
about
is
this?
very
Where like,
important.
yeah, what about like with Harvey? And all of a sudden Harvey shows up and it's like, oh, Harvey's Hush? Like what? What's going on?
Yeah, that I just remember thinking like he's not Two-Face anymore. That's really interesting, and they kept it that way for quite a while in the books. It wasn't until 1 year later, I think, he became Two-Face again. Which honestly, I was a little disappointed in, to be honest with you,
Mhm.
because I was like, I kind of liked it when he was good Harvey again, but at the same time, it's like Two-Face is such a great villain that you can't keep him away for too long, right?
Right, right. I agree. And then here's when Bruce is with Talia of all people in his like tactical parachute
Yeah,
suit.
yeah. It's such a they made a toy of that back in the day. I remember that.
Yes, yes. I think I saw it. Somebody, I think Wes Greer. I don't know if Wes Greer. Wes is a madman on Twitter. He has like every figure known to man of like these, of especially of like anything cool. Maybe I saw it in his collection. I don't know, but it was way cool. And then you've got Batman sword fighting with Ra's again, homaging, that famous story.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then again, noticing it now, like Bruce is starting to look thinner. And then, oh, this was the interlude, I think, the in the Bat Cave. This is the
Yeah,
start of that.
with him and Catwoman. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah. So
yeah,
we're
that was in I think that was in Wizard. And I remember being a little annoyed, like, why is it only in this?
yeah,
But then when they
interlude,
collected it, I was like, oh, okay.
interlude. Oh,
Yeah,
dude,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and before this was collected, and I was getting my Wizard monthly, I had to read up to that point of when that particular issue came out. Then the
Mhm.
Wizard came out, and then I read the Wizard, and then the next month's issue came out. So I was reading it like that back in the day,
Oh, okay.
right? And
Yeah, yeah.
then here's that cool, another cool one. This is when Jason Todd comes back.
Yeah, I was thinking about that because I know you just did a thing with Judd Winnick, which
Mhm.
super jealous, by the way. Uh,
Did you
but
get a chance to watch it?
not yet.
Watch it.
But
He drops a lot of gems. So I was like, oh, ooh.
I I've always loved watching interviews with him because he's so charismatic.
Mhm.
Um, but I was thinking about it when I was rereading it. I was like, it's so interesting how Jason Todd is such a presence throughout the book, and he's not in it at all.
Mhm.
And I think Jeff Loeb even said something like, um, we I think he either knew that DC had plans for Jason Todd, or maybe he felt like, well, I'll put this in there and somebody will pick it up. Again, the type of thing that doesn't really happen anymore, right? Like a writer saying, well, I'm going to throw this out there and see what somebody does. Like I just mentioned the Harvey Dent thing. Well, we
Mhm.
had good Harvey Dent for a while, and he's going to become Two-Face again. It's like, okay, and that was a thread that they did that you could have with that continuity. And nowadays it's just like, who knows what the next person's gonna do, kind of. Um, but I miss that stuff where it's like, well, here's the seed being planted for Jason Todd to either come back or something about that event is going to happen again. Um, but it's always just like, like I said, it's stuff like that that kept you interested, and why I would buy a comic book at number 608 and stick with it until like number 700, because it all felt all together in some way, shape, or form, right?
Right, right. There was a plan as opposed to like throwing poop at Velcro, which is which is what's going on now. Right?
Right, right.
I asked I don't know if you got a chance to watch the Dan interview we did, but I asked Dan, I said, what prompted bringing Jason back permanently? And he goes, of all the issues of Hush, he said, the one with Jason Todd sold the most. It was strictly sales. He goes, I'm no dummy, he said. And
Yeah.
so he said he asked for a pitch. Judd had a pitch, and that's how it came to be. So
That that's really funny. That was a good impression, by the way.
thank you. Thank you. I actually, when you watch the Judd interview, I actually give Judd the actual full, oh, I said, who's got a pitch? Judd had a pitch, So
Well,
yeah.
but I mean, like that makes sense, and it's arguments I've had with people on Twitter, especially on the Spider-Man side of things, when people are complaining that the current run of Amazing Spider-Man is the worst thing that's ever happened, and blah blah blah. I'm like, uh, it's every issue is going into like a second or third printing, man. So they're gonna keep those guys on.
Yeah.
It's how it works. Like, there's a reason that Michael Bay directed 5 freaking Transformers movies. It's just the money's talking and they're listening.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Isn't that true, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
My Michael Bay, yeah. She's Bayham. Instead of
Yeah,
mayhem, it's Bayham, right?
yeah, which is perfect. And you hear that word, it's like that makes perfect sense.
So Judd had in the if you pick up the hardcover deluxe of the Red Hood one that came out at the beginning of this month in September,
Uh-huh.
he there's this like 2.5 page intro that Judd writes, and
Hmm.
he says that he was like, oh, when Jason came back, and I told Judd, I'm like, I had the same reaction. So when I saw Jason in this, dude,
Yeah,
I lost it. I was like, oh my God. Now, and again, I was collecting it monthly. So I had to wait for a whole nother 30 days, right?
yeah.
It was killing me. It was so painful. And
I
so now to go
that
through this. Mhm.
that was something I knew, because I had like and there's like a new one like every couple of years, but when I was a kid, I had like the ultimate visual history of Batman, right? You go to Barnes and Noble now, there's a different one that's completely different from the one I had like in '99 or whatever.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
knew about Jason Todd. I don't think I had ever read a comic with Jason Todd in it at that point. I
Me
just
too.
kind of knew he had this kind of infamous story behind him.
Yeah, look at this, dude. And then look at the not only the perspective, but even the detail, I guess, on the church or mausoleum, like behind his head.
Yeah. It it is, oh my gosh. It's just like I said before when I was talking about the Superman bit, I have such a bad tendency to just kind of flip through the books and just not really pay attention because I'm reading it, for the entire story. So with a lot of these, when the art is that freaking good, like I did it recently again with the Batman '89 comic that
Oh,
Sam Hamm, Joe Quinones did.
mhm.
Like, I like stopped and looked at all the panels because I kept seeing people online going like Hook, like, look, there's a callback to all this other Tim Burton stuff in the first couple issues at least. And in this one, it's the same thing where I'm like looking at it, I'm like, it's not like a lot of visual callbacks, or maybe there are, I just don't know them. But like you said, the level of detail, it's like you don't have to do that. You don't have
Yes.
to make you don't have to painstakingly draw out every nook and cranny of the damn cathedral or whatever.
Mhm.
But it is, I mean, it's why we're talking about this book 20 something years later. Like, it,
Amen.
it holds up for that reason.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now this is where the big Batman has a breakthrough after seeing Oracle.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so this is now he's going to be headed to the pier. So have you read the Lost Days and of Red Hood?
Yes. Yeah.
So that's that's obviously in the book too, in the deluxe. And it's interesting how Judd homages like Jason Todd did a quick switcheroo with
Mhm.
Clayface. you know,
Yes,
and
yes.
they show that in the book, and then they show how retroactively he gave he gave Hush Bruce's identity, which then
Mm.
picks up from here, but it was all like what do they call that again? Retro.
Retconning.
Thank you, retcon.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, that was so awesome.
It
So
was it totally works in the story too.
it
Like
does. It blends seamlessly. It really
yeah,
does.
it's
And
that
then Harold, we haven't seen Harold in any of the new
I
iterations.
I again I only knew who he was because of that Ultimate Visual History book,
Hmm.
right? Because I don't I even to this day I don't think I've ever read a comic with him in it. Like I only knew who he was because of that. So when he confronts him, I was like, oh, it's that guy. Like, and even then, just that quick interaction because it's over in like 2 pages
Yes.
is it again like the movie just didn't do it as well because the 2 pages of this book you get the history and those watercolors really help. It
Yes.
sells us on the memories and the almost like there's because it's like all blue and huey, it feels very warm. So there's this warm 'cause you know that about like blue and red colors, right? Just
Mhm.
like how you that's why like the matadors have the red cape or whatever, or I don't know, whatever. But it's it's just like this like nice little reunion, and it's like, why would you do this to me? And he's like, you know, I he's like, he offered me something that you never could, and then he's dead.
Boom.
And it's
Yeah.
just like,
Shot in the head. Yep.
and then it's like, oh my God, like I hate this guy already. you
Yes.
know?
It's like you killed, you killed him. You killed him. Now, the thing with Harold is that like right now I'm rereading the uh the Nightfall omnibus, and he's already been referenced. Like they show him working on the car. And
Okay.
it's like, and I was like, oh, right, Harold. Because they never showed him in the like even in the animated series.
Hmm.
They never showed him in that. I don't even think he was ever in like Super Friends. You had to like know the continuity, like old school continuity.
He's
So
not in the movie, is he? I don't think it's been a
no,
while since I watched the movie, but yeah,
no,
yeah, I
he's
didn't
not
think
in
so.
the movie. He's not even in the cartoon. Like they didn't even homage him in the cartoon, whereas they homage pretty much everything else.
Right, right.
And then Batman's holding him, then there's Hush. And we got more watercolors like giving backstory on Harold.
Yeah, yeah. And it's gorgeous.
Oh, absolutely. And it's amazing how seamlessly Jim was able to mesh the watercolors with the current colors. Like it didn't
Mm.
throw it off. Didn't it wasn't a distraction.
It's a really good collaboration. The whole thing with Bruce or not Bruce, with Jeff Loeb and uh, um, Jim Lee. Geez, I don't know why his name escaped me. We were talking about this entire time because it's like, oh my gosh, like they, the book, when I say I read the books for the stories, like when there's a great writer and a great artist, and of course, enough can't be said about Alex Sinclair and Scott Williams too, kind of the unsung heroes of these things, um, because it feels like a real collaboration. Like I'm not sitting there going, "Wow, this art is great," or "This story is great," or "The writing is great." I'm going, "This whole thing is great,"
Yes.
and that's really hard to do, in comic books because there's been plenty of books I've read where I'm like, Batman '89 is kind of a good example where I feel like the Sam Hamm Batman is different than like the Tim Burton Batman, you
Mhm.
know.
Mhm.
So Joe Quinones can tap into that Tim Burton quirkiness and the Anton Firth of it with some of the designs of like Robin and the Bat Cycle and all that stuff. Um, whereas like the not that it's not a bad thing, but the writing sometimes just feels like just a little off, but only because Batman talks in those 6 issues more than he talks in those first two movies combined, you know?
True. True. Yes. Yes. That's a good point. Yeah. So here we're now we got
Yep.
basically Harvey basically ending Hush. He goes into the water, Bruce jumps in, he can't find him. So of course, we know that eventually Hush is going to come back.
Right.
Did you
That
ever did you ever read Heart of Hush?
yes. Actually, I just reread it recently. Yeah, even before you even asked me to come on, just because I
Now,
was thinking about it.
Heart of Hush, I've only read it once. I have it, but I've only read it once because when I read it and saw Dustin Wynn's art,
Mm,
it was so his art obviously is so different than Jim Lee's. And I
yeah.
was just longing for something even similar. Didn't have to be Jim Lee, but if it was like Gary Frank or like Jason Fabik, but because
Yeah.
just his art is so different. And like you said, epic story, epic art here, colors. Whereas to me, Heart of Hush was epic story and art, which kind of took away from it. So
I get what you mean, but I think it fits the way Paul Dini writes because it the way Paul Dini writes feels I can't help but make it feel like the animated series, of course, because I'm just going to forever associate him with that. So
amen.
that moment, so that story, I think, kind of worked as like uh in that vein of the way Paul Dini writes, and I
So
agree with you. It would have been cooler to have
so it
something
didn't
else.
it didn't take as big a toll, like it didn't stick out as sore of a thumb to you as it did to me, you mean?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. See, like I hope that when I go back to reread it, maybe I can be like that, now that I've had some space as opposed to going from this into that. So,
yeah,
all right. So now we're at the tail end as we're wrapping up. Here's where the big exposition dump.
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
This is where everything unfolds. I remember being like, "Oh man, it was the Riddler!" Like, whoa. And then Bruce is basically like saying, he'll never tell
Yeah.
Edward because then the riddle and the mystery is gone, right?
Yeah, the knowledge is power thing, and
Yeah.
it totally tracks. So it doesn't feel like a cop out ending. Like it, and I think the way Jim draws it too, where Riddler is like, he's like, and it's like he can't come back to that. He can't like Batman he still gets the last laugh in a way. And I really like that because I think this was also partially, it must have been, I don't know this for sure, but it must have been Jeff Loeb going, well, we, because in like Long Halloween and the other one, Dark Victory, the
Mhm.
Riddler has such a minuscule part. He
Yes.
almost does treat him as like kind of like a joke. Whereas in this, I was like, oh, he's finally giving the Riddler his due a little bit, as like the mastermind tactician that he really should be.
You know what? That's a good point. And I don't know if I've read it before or maybe yeah, Jeff was like, you know what? I downplayed him so much in those two stories
Hmm.
that he's going to be like my trump card in this. And
Right, right.
like anyone who's followed will be like, oh wow, okay, now the Riddler's a serious threat. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, here, this is after everything wraps up and Batman and Catwoman are about to kiss, and then she says, hush.
Yes.
And then he says, why would you say that? Right?
Why would you say that
Why would you say that name? Martha, why would you hush? Why would you say that? She says, why
name?
would you say that? She's like, ow, you're hurting me. What the hell's wrong with you?
Yeah.
And so then the very last page is just him left alone. And he says, someday.
It I remember being at the time kind of disappointed with the ending,
Oh, me
but
too, dude.
but as time has gone on, I'm like, I totally dig it, because again, in that kind of, somebody else can pick up this thread down the line.
And
Uh,
Tom King, how many years later? 20, 18, 19
18 or
years later?
19 years, yeah. But yeah, but especially rereading it now, and my whole thing on every show I'm on, I'm always about, oh, the emotional reality is so great. I thought that especially in that scene because when she said hush, because it's never ever confirmed throughout the story if Catwoman is in on it or not. Now we assume she isn't, but she still could have been manipulated to being in it.
Yes.
And uh and that's something that Bruce would still always in the back of his mind go, but was she a part of it or not?
Right.
And that's what makes that ending work so well.
Yes.
Um, and I got to say that for all the changes that the movie did, I really like that change in the movie, the cartoon movie. You know, when she says,
The
you know,
ending and yeah.
yeah, you were going to save him and me. Why? That's not right. That's not fair. He didn't deserve it. And Bruce is like, I don't think that way. I just, or I'm paraphrasing, of course. But that to me, I was like, okay, that sells it. That was really good, especially considering that they botched the whole freaking Tommy Elliott bit, you know.
Yes.
Um,
I agree
because
with
I,
you.
I,
That was a more satisfying ending. I agree.
yeah,
I agree.
yeah,
For all yeah.
but still both great. But yeah, but I liked how they made that change in the adaptation.
But really, why would she say that? She's like, hush. And he's like, why would you say that? Like after everything we just went through, you're gonna
Yeah,
say that? And meanwhile, all this happened and Harold died. So
so I just
maybe
watched like a bunch of my friends get shot in the face. Like,
you're gonna say his name, you know what I mean?
like
So
it'd be the same as if she'd said, "Oh, don't be such a joker, Bruce," and then it'd be like, "What
yeah,
is the matter with you?"
yeah. And she like, right.
Like,
This is one of the
come on, Bruce,
few
I'm not speaking in riddles. Like, what are you doing to me?
this is also good for the extra content. I enjoyed this.
Oh yes, yeah.
Like they go issue by issue with a little breakdown, a little insight from Jim Lee. And at the beginning, they actually have a good back and forth between DC Comics and Loeb and Lee. So really cool stuff. Like, and they've got even have like his watercolors in the back, like of extra stuff he did.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was there's been so many different collected editions that some of those are the covers that
Mm-hmm.
I've seen like on Amazon or eBay or whatever. Yeah. They're
There's a
gorgeous.
load, yeah, a load of stuff. Even stuff oh here, like when he did the figures.
Yep, yep. I
I still have a hush in the box.
oh really?
Yeah, from this. Yeah, yeah.
I for my birthday, my sister got me the Hush Batman that's like the Two-Face. Um hang on. I'm gonna go get it.
Yeah, please, please, please.
There. Yeah, so I have the Funko.
Oh,
That's
super
the
cool.
yeah. And then as like a with some birthday money for myself, got the McFarlane
Oh,
Batman Hush.
that's the 12-inch one?
Yeah,
Oh, dude, that's beautiful.
yeah. It's yeah, it was like $40. So it's bigger than the other ones I
That's a
have.
steal of a deal.
Yeah. So I was like, I have to buy that, you know. And well actually what prompted it, no, because it was just some like random Amazon money I think I still have left over from Christmas, I think, because it was right after the first Flash trailer came out and they showed Ben Affleck in the blue costume, which just in the trailer looked cool and the movie looked weird.
Yeah.
But I remember people online going, "It's the Hush costume. That's so cool." And I was like, and again, just me being the smart guy I am, going, you know, I'm just gonna go on Amazon. I'm gonna buy it. I'm gonna buy it. I got some money. I'm gonna buy it. You know. So I think I only paid like $20 for it, but but like
I think it's
with
sold
Amazon
out
credit,
now, that figure too.
I think so. A lot of them do like, and even the Funkos. You know, if there's ones that I want, I kind of it's like you have to get them right away because
Oh, speaking
otherwise
of
the next
Funko, dude,
yeah.
Funko. This is a friend got this for me probably about like 5, 6 years ago. It's the Hush one of him standing on
Oh yeah.
uses Hush.
Yep, yep. I actually have that one too. That one and the Joker one somewhere buried over there with all my other Funkos.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
That's the only Funko I have too.
I mean, if you're gonna have one,
Right? Especially
um,
that one.
yeah, because
It's super
it's
cool.
like and it's such iconic imagery. You know, there's a reason. Like we said that they like the I'm pretty sure that the Hush was it's always been on the bucket list for DC animation because anytime you go to like one of the screenings or previews or whatever at a Comic Con, somebody would always ask. It's like the big ones like Kingdom Come or Nightfall or and Hush. Like, are you ever going to do those? And they were always, and the answer was always like, well, we'll see, or we're trying, or something like that.
Yes, yes. I agree. When I heard, I remember when I saw it, it was like, whoa, oh my God, Hush is on the slate. I
Yep.
was like, oh my goodness.
It, you
This,
know,
no, go
well,
ahead.
I was just gonna say, I've always liked the voice actors that they cast. I think Jason O'Mara does okay,
Hmm.
but I don't know, like the the only other voice actor I think that's held a candle to Kevin Conroy, and that's kind of like by a if there's Kevin Conroy's number one, number two is kind of like way down here. And that's not an insult to this actor, but it for me it would be Bruce Greenwood.
I agree
Like,
with you 100%.
you
100%.
know, so when he came back, the movie's eh, like the Gotham by Gaslight movie. I was like, well, it's Bruce Greenwood, so that's cool. It's like,
Yeah, I dug it. I was like, oh, wait a minute. They brought Bruce back? Oh
yeah,
boy. Right?
and and
Down,
it just it works. And then both he and Peter Weller were in Star Trek Into Darkness.
right? Yeah, I
So
remember watching that and I'm like, I don't think I spoke it out loud, but like inside myself, I was like, Batman and Batman.
yep, yep. And I read that that's what prompted the first Star Trek, the J.J. Abrams Star Trek, was what prompted um, uh, Bruce Timm to reach out to Bruce Greenwood and say, like, would you want to be Batman? Because he heard, listened to his voice in that, and he was like, yeah, kind of a cool voice,
Yes.
and just the way I mean, that Under the Red Hood movie, that's like just about perfect. It's a very, I kind of underrated actually. Gets kind of swept under the rug
It's
with some of the other stuff.
it's seriously underrated. I think it's maybe one of the best. That and the Phantasm could stand toe to toe in my book to like the live action movies. So
Yes, 100%, 100%.
Judd, I told Judd, I said that that line when he's flying back in the third act, and he's like,
Hmm.
"My partner, my soldier, my fault." I was
Yeah,
like, Judd, and then Judd explained how at first he had it in another scene, and then Alan Burnett was like, "Why don't we have it in the bat plane?" Like, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you're right." I
yeah,
love. I get goosebumps whenever I hear that in there, and I've seen the movie probably 3 dozen times. So.
yeah. It's one that because I said like if if you if I didn't know ahead of time that freaking Bender was going to be the Joker,
Yeah.
I I wouldn't have believed it. And I got to meet John DiMaggio at a New York Comic Con,
You
and
did?
by chance, like by pure chance, I was like, I want him to sign something Joker. And I was looking through like a back issue bin, and I found the cover that has Red Hood choking Joker, and he's like, "Hey, Bats, a little help or something like that." And I was like, "Oh my God, this is fate. I have to get John DiMaggio to sign this." And so I got it from the guy for like $2 or $3, and then went in line and talked to John DiMaggio, and I said like, "This is my favorite performance of you ever," and he looked at me like, "Really?" I was just like, "Yeah," because like my favorite performance ever of Adam West is the Gray Goat. You
Yeah.
know,
The gray ghost. Yeah.
it's just so like when these actors who we think we know so well, like
Mhm.
you can listen to just about any cartoon and be like, oh, that's Billy West, oh, that's John DiMaggio, that's
Mhm.
Kevin Michael Richardson. But
Mhm.
when they get to flex a little bit, I I I can't get enough of it.
Yeah, they go outside of their comfort zone or what we know them for.
Right.
Dude, I remember this. This was the cover of a Wizard magazine right here.
Yes, I remember that. Yep.
Yeah. And that was the cover of a Wizard. And then this was beautiful too, all this.
Oh yeah, yeah. And Jim Lee very much like kind of Frank Miller is not afraid to have the cape be just
Right.
magnificent and huge, you
Yes.
know?
Yes. And an exaggeration a la Neil Adams.
Right. And the that Todd McFarlane cover too,
Oh
I'm
yeah,
talking about?
Toddy did it up.
Yeah.
There it is, Hush. We went through it. We highlighted some of our favorite points. We even compared it to the animated movie. I think we did it justice
Yeah.
and honored the beautiful art that was, is, and will always be Jim Lee. So
It's just, I mean, it's that classic kind of Jeff Loeb thing where he does in a lot of his books, like especially his Batman books, where it's like, especially if you go through the long Halloween, like this is the Joker issue, this is the Scarecrow issue, this is the blah 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 issue, this is this issue. But and again, it works so well in the comic book format, especially in the monthly format, that I just remember being excited when the next person showed up. We didn't even talk about the Scarecrow. When the Scarecrow shows up, like he's only in it for just a bit,
mhm.
but it's awesome. And where did this come from? And uh, the way that they incorporated so many of Gotham rogues in it, and even the heroes at the time. It's like when Tim Drake shows up, I remember thinking even as a kid reading the book, going, "Oh yeah, that's right, Robin's there," because
Yes.
he hadn't been the previous like 11 issues.
And he was in his original outfit that what's his name? Well, what Neil Adams gave him the outfit, and then George Perez drew it in a lonely, or was it a lonely place of dying? Was it or
I
something?
think so, yeah. And that's like you know that's like one of my favorite Robin suits.
Mm-hmm.
Like it looks so good on him. So when I see like kind of the pixie boots Robin or whatever, from the old days, I'm like, it just looks so weird. Like, why would Batman dress him like that? So when he wears like kind of it looks more tactical. Like that's cool.
Yes, more
Um,
tactical. Yep. And they've even
yeah.
like spiffed it up now to where it's like they kept the green and some of the
Mhm.
color scheme, but he's got like long sleeves and things are a little
Yep.
different. But yeah, I even like the Red Robin suit. I thought that was cool.
I did too. I didn't care for the way they redesigned him in the New 52 in the
Mhm.
Teen Titans book. Like that was just too busy looking, you know what I mean?
Yeah, with the big
Um,
weird wings and
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
It's
I
it's
liked
like
it with just the black cape and yeah.
yeah, and I kind of like how Damian now has a because there's some backlash against it, but Damian's Robin suit looks a little bit more like a bat suit because it's more
Yeah.
gray.
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
I think that's perfect for his character, you know.
Yes. Yes.
Um, versus Tim Drake, I think, is a bit of a lighter character, obviously. So he would have a lighter costume, same way like um, when they went back to the blue and the black for Dick Grayson. I said, well, that makes way more sense. I liked the red, through the New 52, but when they brought the blue back, I was like, especially the way that Bruno Renando, or I'm sorry, I'm butchering his name, the way he's drawing it now, I'm just like, this is so gorgeous, just
It's
this is
beautiful. It's
that's
beautiful.
Nightwing.
Well, JJ, it's been fun jamming with you on this.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
grateful you made the time to come on and chat with me and the viewers. Is there anything that you want to throw out or want people to know?
I guess I'll plug the Four Comic Junkies podcast, which Brian's been on a couple
Yeah,
times.
check it out.
Yeah, it's wherever you get your podcasts. There's also the Spider-Man Book Club, also wherever you get your podcast if you're a Spider-Man fan. Um, and you can follow me on Twitter at Four Comic Junkies. That's FOR Comic Junkies. I'm always excited to talk comics. I posted this the other day where I was just kind of having like a bad day, like bad
Mhm.
weekend, kind of, you know, uh, just not feeling like myself. I was sitting at work, bored. There's some downtime. Pulled out my DC Universe app. It was hard to podcast, but I started rereading, and I was just lost in the story. And after that first issue, I just started smiling again. I was like, man, I forgot that you know sometimes you just need to be reminded. These things can really just give you that dopamine boost to get you through the day.
Well, certainly. So ultimately, the message is comics are good for your mental health.
Exactly. Yeah. Read more comics.
Read more comics. Well, again, thank you, my friend, for coming on. It was a pleasure.
Oh,
And
anytime.
let me know when you need me again.
Absolutely, for sure.